Cadillac fucking volume mfethu.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Dr. Noble's Study. I'm your host, Keith Noble, and I want to thank everyone for once again tuning in to the channel. Today, in episode 3, I want to take us on a journey back about 110 years, specifically January 2nd, 1915. At the time in America's history, there was a huge war happening about who was going to be the leader in the automotive industry. And at the time, Cadillac was the unquestioned biggest champion in terms of cars and development here in North America. But Henry Ford and what they were doing in Detroit, it started to bring competition in the Cadillac. And so at the time, the most popular newspaper in the country was called the Saturday Evening Post. And Cadillac ran what is perhaps one of the greatest marketing ad campaigns in the history of this country. And the simple title of that ad was The Penalty of Leadership. The Penalty of Leadership. And in that ad, Cadillac never mentions anything about their cars. But the ad campaign takes the reader on a journey to explain what is required of those who want to be the first in their industry. What's required to be an excellent author, a world-renowned painter, a leading thought scientist. Everything in terms of leadership comes at a cost as you're setting the standard for your industry. And so it's in the spirit of that Cadillac ad more than 110 years ago that today, for this episode, we're going to talk about the five traits that are good leaders that they use, that I have seen over the course of my tenure in the professional world. And hopefully, when we look at these traits, you'll identify some of the traits that you may have or the traits that you want to see in your leaders. But before we get into that, I just want to remind everyone to please, if you can, if you're liking the content that we're providing here on Dr. Noble's Study, please subscribe to the channel and like the videos. This helps us to grow the network so that we can continue to provide free and enlightening content that hopefully continues to uplift your spirit. All right, with that, the penalty of leadership. One of the first traits that I have found, it reminds me something of a conversation that my grandfather and I had, where my grandfather was talking about what does it take to be a leader in the church community. As I mentioned in our first podcast, my grandfather spent 42 years at Shiloh Missionary Baptist Church in Newark, Ohio. And there's preaching to your community, preaching to your congregation, and then there's preaching to pastors, and these are not one and the same. And my grandfather told me something that I have lived and seen for myself in all of the leaders I've had the privilege to work for. And the first, and I would argue the most important trait of any good leader is that people want to know that you care before they care that you know. I'll repeat it again. Trait number 1. People want to know that you care before they care that you know. You know, one of the common things that, whether I've worked at the State Department or CIA or anywhere else, if you interviewed one of my staff members and asked them about me, I guarantee you they will say that Keith always reminds us that we're in the people business. I don't care what industry that you're in, intelligence, in marketing, science and research, technology. Hell, You could be a person that's creating just, mechanical parts. Whatever the industry, whatever it is that you're doing, it involves people. And people are not automatons. Human beings have feelings. They have passions, desires, things that animate them. And we all know that leader. I'm sure you're no different than me, where it's the new supervisor's first day and he or she comes in and they want to change everything. They start on a Monday and by Wednesday, you don't even recognize your own office. That's probably a good example of bad leadership. A good leader brings their staff, their employees, if you're in a volunteer organization, your members in, and asks them for the privilege of participating in the journey where you're trying to take the organization. Good leaders get to know what are the strengths, what are the challenges of your staff. What's their family life? Are they recently divorced? Do they have a sick child? What's the why that animates them? It is impossible to lead human beings and you don't know them and they don't know you. Are you just the new corporate person that comes in that's only caring about flipping the company over? Or are you someone that is invested in their personal and private success? I like to say that a good leader can find a way of taking an organization's mission and matching it to the why of the staff or employee. When you can have that merger of an employee's interests, desires, the why, what motivates them, and what the organization is trying to do, then you have a group that's aligned. And if you just come in and you want to just start changing everything so you could put your stamp on it, because there's something about human beings. If I didn't put my name on it, if it didn't get the fill in the blank stamp of approval, it's not good. And so the first key component of being a good leader, and this is again, all of these are going to come as a penalty because it costs you something. Being a leader, when you raise your hand and you're saying that, hey, I want to have the opportunity to lead other human beings, it's not free. It takes a lot of time, a lot of energy. And one of the first things a good leader does is get to know who are their troops and how do I motivate them. And so the first thing I want you to remember is that your staff, no matter what it is, forget staff, forget being a former employer. You're trying to be a leader in your family. And wherever it is that you are a part of, whatever organization, group, get to know the people before you try to lead them. They want to know that your values align with things that are going to protect and enable them. And so good leaders, they know before they go. Number 2, and this trait is so often misunderstood. Put others before yourself. So my first overseas assignment with the CIA, I was very privileged to lead a large dispersed organization in Southeast Asia. And I was responsible for embassies all over the region. I had staff in so many places I can't even remember them all. And I was the deputy program manager. And so I was in charge of day-to-day operations. And my phone rang off the hook every night, no days off. And then in addition to that, I was accountable to the leadership team back in Washington, D.C., that depending on what time of year it was 11 to 12 hours behind us. So I would catch hell from people in the region and catch hell from headquarters. And I couldn't afford to have a bad day. I was responsible for people's lives. People that some of them were in war zones or are dealing with, you know, national calamities. No one cares if you're having marital problems or you had a bad night at the casino. When you step up and you say you're willing to take the mantle of leadership, you have to know that others and their interests come before yours. When you say you have an open door policy, it's open for a reason. How do you help promote your staff? How do you help develop them? It can't be that you are in a leadership position and it's about you. It's about your own glory. You know, the late Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. talked about the drum major instinct in one of his last speeches in 1968. Everyone wants to be first. Everyone wants to be great. Everyone wants recognition. But as a leader, if it's all about you and not about we, how are your people going to fall in line? How are they going to support you and give you the information that you don't have? So, number two, in terms of best practices of leadership and what you should look for in the leaders in your own organization, or if you are a leader, what are you looking to portray is people need to know that they come first. Part of the penalty of being a leader are that you're putting others before yourself. And that's a core principle that will never change. Value point number three, and this is something that we've all experienced. I'm sure you've had a boss. On Monday, they come into work, the Commanders in Washington, D.C. have won the big game. It's high five for everybody. Hey, beers on me after work. Don't worry about take time off. Everything is good. You talk to me about anything. They're really chatty. They'll come to your cubicle, get in your business. And then by Wednesday, doors shut. They walk past you in the hallway. It's like you don't even exist. Have you ever had a roller coaster supervisor? I know I've had. Is that the person that you're going to give her or him your best? Is that the person you're going to trust with sensitive information? Of course not. Being a leader is like being in a good marriage. Consistency matters most of all. Like I mentioned, you can't have a bad day, especially if you are in the military or you are responsible for people, expats, and you're overseas. But really, it applies to leadership of any kind. People want to know that you are always going to be available and that they can plan around your personality. So if you're the jovial, welcoming type, even if you're crying inside and you're just dealing with something tough, when you show up to work, you need to be the same. You want people to feel comfort and trust that they can come to you with anything, no matter the situation. Consistency will get you in the long run. It's the long game, so to speak. And that's something I think get overlooked. And again, leaders, executives, we're human beings. We're no different than a person that's, just started. But when you take that mantle, that penalty, and you sign up that you're going to set the standard, if you're not consistent, don't be surprised if you get inconsistent performance from your staff. All right, number 4, and this is something that is very near and dear to my heart. Good leaders are compassionate. There's so many things where you could think about where if a problem comes up and a person makes a mistake, the letter of the law can condemn you. But I've often found that a good leader, it's not that you shook your responsibilities, but you understand that you're dealing with people. And people, they don't always make the right decision. The last episode that we did, I talked about failure, and I was very transparent about 3 of some of my biggest failures in life. And by the grace of God, I am so happy that people that I counted on showed me compassion at my lowest moment. And so when you're a supervisor, just because you have the authority to do something, is it the right thing? Is that what's really in the best interest of the organization? I can't tell you how many times that I've had what was called a problem employee or a challenge. And what I found was the reason that the staff member was having poor performance was there was a mismatch between their why and what we were doing. Oftentimes, if I've experienced something where a staff member is not performing, I first look at the mirror and think, well, what have I done? What could I have done a better job of setting a standard or describing the mission or whatever it is? And so I think that empathy and compassion should be traits that any great leader have. It doesn't mean that you allow people to get away with anything. It just means you give people grace to be human. Again, we're all in the people business. We're not managing yet robots. AI hasn't taken over and created Skynet yet. And so when you think about if you are a person that wants to go into leadership or you're an existing leader yourself, just ask yourself, do you create a space where people are afraid to make mistakes? Or do you create a space or a sandbox or a safe place where people can learn, grow, and develop? Lastly, number 5, but it's certainly not the least. Good leaders are honest. Honesty can be one of the hardest things human beings we have. There's a reason, and I'm not an evolutionary biologist, but it must have been something when we were just developing where it was easy to just kind of look the other way or tell a white lie just to keep everyone's relationship moving forward. There are many people who they hate conflict, and again, Lord knows I hate drama. But when you are a leader, it's always important to be honest and upfront with your staff. Sometimes people need to hear the tough news that, hey, you're not meeting the standard. Or, you know what? If you keep doing this, we're going to have to go in a different direction. The last thing anyone wants is to have smoke blown up their ass. Give them the honest truth about what's working and what isn't working. Don't be a person that only talks to the people when you have something positive to say. And when you're dealing with honest, critical feedback, you don't have to be malicious with it. Hey, this may not be the right position or field for you. But the worst thing in the world as a leader is for people not to believe that they can come to you for the truth, or that you're not going to be honest with them about what's happening in the organization or what's happening with their performance or whatever it is. Truth is always the optimum, and it can be painful, it can be tough. Lord knows we're all human beings. We all deal with this. We want to make everyone happy, but sometimes you can't. And good leaders know the fine difference between the interests of the many or the interests of the few. And sometimes I've had to stand up and tell a staff member that, listen, this isn't working, and I'm going to help you find a different vocation. And a couple of times I've had to do that. The person was this holding on, like, thank you, someone, because they were trying to meet a standard that clearly they were not capable of doing. And so when you think about what you want out of a leader, don't get upset if your supervisor, your mentor, even your spouse shares critical feedback. And if that critical feedback is open, is honest, and it's pure, even if you disagree, be thankful that someone gives a damn about you enough that they're willing to be honest, because we all know in society that's not always a guarantee. The worst thing in the world is to be the last one to know. because people were not honest with you about what was happening in your business, your family, in whatever organization that you're involved with. So good leaders always set the standard that people know that no matter what, they're going to get the truth, and they respect the fact that you delivered in a way that is respectful of them and keeping in mind that they too are professionals and are trying their best to do what's in the organization's interests. And so with that, everyone, again, I just wanted to give you a brief overview of 5 important lessons or values that I think good leaders have. You know, when we look at what's happening politically in this country and around the world, everyone has an issue with their political leadership or what's happening in their industry. And so I want you to take a brief moment to think about it. And I would love to hear in the chat just what are some of the characteristics that you have found that are good leaders? Or do you agree? Do you have a different lineup of what do you think are the top 5? And so again, I want to thank everyone for tuning in. You'll see here links to 2 of our previous episodes, and I look forward to seeing you next Monday here on Dr. Noble's Study. God bless, have a safe week, and I look forward to seeing you again.
Kailangan sa volume,